Why is there always a conflict between science, spirituality, and religion?
Science is the discovery of consciousness, religion is the adoption of consciousness, and spirituality is the expression of it. There's no difference.
What is consciousness? Why does humanity need it now more than ever?
Max Planck had the famous quote that consciousness is fundamental and matter is derivative of consciousness. Things that only nature can do, that science has not been able to do, consciousness can do.
Like
DNA, it determines your hair color, your eye color, your genetics, even your health and well-being. And we've seen things that when you change consciousness, we've seen DNA changes.
for somebody like me, a science student, why do I believe this?
A lot of people have actually left religion and spirituality because science has provided more for them than religion has. But science is still struggling to have influence and control over the mind and our emotions and our mental health. Consciousness is what determines your state of mind.
Do you think that practicing consciousness is like altering your destiny?
Yes.
The pressure, stress, anxiety, relationship issues, mental health issues, physical health issues, we feel that this is the default nature of life and this is how a life is lived.
Your natural state is well-being. Life is full of so much wonder and beauty and happiness and joy. It's like I had no idea before. So if there's anything that I want people to know at the very beginning of this journey is to know that God does love you and you're not alone and you are so incredibly loved more than you'll ever know.
Whether spirituality is scientific or is it just a belief? What is enlightenment? What is consciousness? What is a blessing? And how it changes our life? Let's learn about all these things today from a very different perspective from our guest, Dahryn Trivedi. She is an enlightened spiritual leader, co-founder of Divine Connection, has come all the way from Texas, USA to India to share her miraculous journey with us today. And before we dive into today's episode, I would like to remind you that every Sunday on this channel, we bring a new video which can help you and your family improve your overall well-being. So if you're not a subscriber yet, then do hit the subscribe button and let's start today's conversation. So I would like to start with your story. What's the journey? What brought you into this world of consciousness and transformation and blessings? How it started?
From my experience, I had this very inherent deep connection with the divine. And it was something that I felt. I had these experiences of complete stillness of the mind, these states of rapture. It was like bliss. Ecstatic states. I felt like I dissolved into something bigger than myself, beyond a shadow of a doubt that this was God. And I grew up, in a Christian church. Basically, my journey was, something I experienced with religion, but felt was missing, just some link between what religion was talking about and what I was experiencing. And I wasn't able to find a way to bridge that gap. So I knew this concept of the guru. So I already had this idea in mind that, the only way to really have that connection, to have the divine in your life is through the help of a conduit. Somebody who's already connected, who's established in that consciousness. And it was around the age of 8, I actually had a new experience where the divine came to me. And in that moment, intuition hit me. And it told me that there was a man who was a guru, an enlightened being, who would be my husband, that man would lead to my own awakening, my own enlightenment. But the thing that God left out was when. When, how this would happen, who exactly this man would be, all these things, God has a tendency to leave things out. Okay. So I had this knowledge and I basically led my whole life. And so I just did what I thought was appropriate. And I actually, I never partied. I never drank alcohol. I never smoked. I never even had sex before marriage.
You never felt like doing all these things?
No, I had zero desire.
Oh.
The desire wasn't even there because I didn't have any other purpose in my life. I didn't have any other goal, right? I didn't have a desire to, have this type of education and graduate and become I had no idea what my destiny was going to lead me through, but I just knew I wanted God, and all of those things, it would fall into place when it was meant to.
But were you liking that? Because you were too young, like at the age of 5 or at the age of 8, you were too young to actually process everything and to actually kind of know what is it. Right. You were just feeling differently than other students of your age. So were you liking this difference? Were you embracing it? Or you wanted to be like other kids?
I definitely didn't want to be like other kids. Okay. But at the same time, for a long part of my life, I didn't know that other people weren't having the experiences I was having, because I truly felt like it was just a normal part of life. And it wasn't until I shared them with other people that I realized that it's strange, it's unusual. And so very quickly, I learned in my life not to talk about it because of people's reactions to it, and because it was vastly misunderstood. And also there's a teaching, don't cast pearls before swine. Not to say that they're swine, but it was more like, whatever is precious to you, hold to your heart and only share with those that can hold it properly in their hearts.
What were the challenges that you faced during this time?
So what happened with my journey is uncertainty that I had, which led to, these rising mental health problems, this anxiety, this fear of the future. I was very shy. Like I had issues, public speaking, huge anxiety throughout my whole life, up until leading to meeting my husband, my guru. Okay. And so my mother especially, she's the one that kind of tuned into it more. And she realized this suffering that I had and this incredible loneliness, inability to make friends. So she dabbled in a bunch of different things. We met with like psychics and other, types of healers from many different modalities, clairvoyance, and she, took me to all these people. I had all these experiences, very significant experiences. And at the best of times, I found like short periods of reprieve from my suffering. I felt like a little more solace. I felt a little more peace for maybe like a few days, and then it was back to baseline. Depression is a silent illness. It's like a very invisible illness that a lot of people have. So I had this kind of just weight within me all the time that, might not have been displayed to other people, but was just inherent behind everything I did, this incredible sadness and longing. It was around 2011. And my birthday's January 30th. So it was around that time, my mother actually, she had found another guru and she received one blessing. She was struggling with some of our family relationships as well as her own mental health issues. And literally within one blessing, everything resolved. And so she was like, I want to take you to meet this man as a birthday gift for you. And so for my 20th birthday, we went to see this guru. Yeah. And on the car ride there, my mother was describing him to me, saying, now you're familiar with the gurus with the long hair, maybe the beard or the saffron robes, right? And she's like, he's not like that at all. Okay. He's very different. He's like, she has, he cut his hair short. He wears a suit and a tie, and he's very much into science. He's not very much into, a lot of the spiritual, dogma and tradition. He's very scientific. He's
he's a guru.
But he is a guru. Okay. And so I was like, that's fascinating to me. So automatically I had this bleeding heart for him. I was just like, I love this man. Whoever he is, I love him. And so I was just so excited to meet him. I went to meet him for this blessing, to bring this guru, to bring my husband into my life. And it turned out he was that very man. From that moment onward, I knew who he was. I was like, this is the man. This is the person that, is going to be my husband. And he had no idea who I was. The moment I sat down for a blessing, it's like he looked down at me. He read my intake form. He put it down. He looked at me and he said, the only thing that will make you happy is God. And without even writing it down, he could see that immediately. He actually told me all the problems I had, things I didn't write down. He said, you must have problems with your menstrual cycle. You must have problems with your sleep. You must have problems. He just gave me a whole list of things that I didn't know.
So after when you got the blessing, how your life changed?
Literally every single one of those problems that he pointed out to me, when I found the resolution of those problems, when those problems disappeared from my life, I'll get emotional talking about it. you realize what true happiness and true well-being is. It's like I had no idea before. And that's the state of so many people. They have no idea what life is really like when these problems don't exist. Life is full of so much wonder and beauty and happiness and joy. Your natural state is well-being. Yeah. God wants you to be happy and healthy. And it was like it took that blessing to take that away for me to see that properly. And that's what told me more than anything that he's real. Because of all the paths I've tried. I love what he's done in my life so much. I'm so grateful. And in that moment, I also realized that, this is the man I've been waiting for. This is the guru. This is the person. And so I didn't know how God would arrange our marriage because, like I said, he had no idea at that time. He didn't look at me and say, "You're my wife." He looked at me and said, "You have these problems." But I knew. And so, but from that moment, I'm like, okay, this relationship has been established, right? I've met him. So God will arrange it. God will make it happen within God's timeline. My quality of sleep, I woke up feeling refreshed and rejuvenated. I instead of feeling like this kind of looming tiredness that you often experience in your day-to-day life or this chronic exhaustion, I noticed that I was magnetic and people responded to me differently. I felt a deeper connection to people after the blessing than I had before. I felt distance before. I felt greater peace, calmness. It's like everything had this glow to it. Life was just glorious. I did better in school. I was already doing well. I did even better, right? Things were better. My cognition improved. My clarity, my thinking abilities just enhanced. It was like just everything. Everything synced up so perfectly with this new state of being I was living in. And so I had no other thing to attribute it to. Nothing else in my life changed except for getting that blessing.
First of all, I completely agree with what you said, that we all are so accustomed to live our life in a certain way that the pressure, stress, anxiety, relationship issues, mental health issues, physical health issues, everything seems to be very, very normal. We feel that this is the default nature of life and this is how a life is lived. We don't really know how and what it can be. Now my question is, how were you sure that something really transformative was happening with you? It could have been just a placebo. How were you sure that something was changing for real?
One of the very first things that happened to me, right, was because like I tell you, a lot of women think their menstrual cycle is very normal, right? And I was one of those people who had an incredible amount of pain with their menstrual cycle. My menstrual cycle was on the heavy side that lasted long days. Like literally 9-10 days at a time. I just had so many problems, mood swings, irritability, depression, all those things, you can name it. I had just finished my menstruation before getting a blessing from him. Immediately after that blessing, that very night, I started it again. My very next menstrual cycle started within 2 days that my last one finished, which has never happened to me before.
It's not possible. It never happens that way. Yeah.
And on top of that, it was very light. I had no pain. I had no irritability. I was in a good mood. Everything was fine. And like I said, also on top of this, I had been to many other people before. I've been to other gurus. I've gotten blessings from other gurus. I've gotten other healings. I've gotten, everybody has worked on me from every modality. I never had an experience like this with any one of them. You'd think if it was psychology, one of those people would have the same impact that his blessing had on my life. So I had enough experiences to compare with this one to truly say that this one stands apart as something different that's beyond my psychology, because my psychology at most gave me reprieve for a few days. I felt good. My energy slightly improved for maybe like 5 days after at most. And then I went back to baseline always. This was something that lasted for months.
You were having the exact same lifestyle which you'd have before.
Yeah, nothing changed. Nothing else changed. The only thing that happened is I met that man, right? There are just so many things, so many synchronicities that make it hard to deny that this is something real and concrete.
Okay.
And at the same time, my skin improved. My hair grew faster.
Okay.
My nails grew stronger and faster as well. The texture, the glow on my skin, right? Everything changed. They say you can't really influence psychologically. And you know, we even have many clinical trials that we can go into about the difference between psychological changes versus what we've been able to see in our clinical trials. And so for me, this experience persuaded me beyond a shadow of a doubt. This is real. So I was waiting for, you know, divine to arrange our marriage, essentially.
You did not say him a word?
No. At that time, I was still, you know, nervous speaking to him. I wasn't sure what I could even say to a guru.
So when did I love you happen?
Right after.
Right after?
Right after.
Okay.
I mean, there was love in his work and who he was as a human and what he was doing. But love at that level happened after I knew his relationship with me and what it would be in the future.
Then how did the story unfold?
What ended up happening is in June 2011, that same year.
Yeah.
So he finally had that knowledge, right? Divine told him that there was a wife, someone in America that was waiting for him that he was supposed to marry. They would be maybe in the early 20s. And he gave this list to that woman. So she had this list. She went through all the details, and basically she was the first person that came into her head was me. But she was a little concerned because she was like, I don't know. I know she fits that age, but she's so young. She's just 20. After that, she called. And it was my mother who answered the phone. And when I heard the news that he was looking for a wife, I just broke down and started crying.
Really?
And my mother had a panic attack. She was like, what's going on? Like, what's this reaction? Because she didn't really know. I didn't tell her that I was going to marry him. She had no idea. It just kind of hit her. She was like, do you want to marry him? And she was like, I want to marry someone like him, and there's no one like him. So yes. She put me in contact with Guruji, and we married in July 13th, 2011.
Your story just sounds like a movie script.
I know.
Lovely. And then everything changed after that.
Yeah. And through his nurturing, through his blessings, you know, within less than a year, I went through my own awakening. I went through my own enlightenment in 2012, March of 2012. Okay. And so now essentially I do what he does, where I also deliver these blessings. I conduct my own science research, you know, with third-party institutions. And I'm also, you know, basically an extension of his mission. I'm helping co-lead the organization and work alongside him to, you know, truly establish this mission on this planet.
And what's your vision now? According to you, what is the future of humanity through the consciousness that you impart?
So it's the same mission that is, you know, the mission of our organization, Divine Connection International, and it's multifaceted. We have actually 9 points that we want to address, you know, on a global scale as part of our mission. One of those is to establish God as a fact-based reality, to establish God scientifically.
To establish God scientifically.
Yes, to prove the existence of God with science. The other one is to properly integrate, to unite and integrate science, religion, and spirituality.
Okay, to integrate all these three.
To integrate all three of them.
Very different.
They are not so different because they all address a vital aspect of life that when they are all put together, they actually help corroborate, collaborate, and progress.
So you think
humanity.
all of these things can coexist?
I think they need to. If we want to continue to progress and evolve, right, as a species, as a culture, as a global civilization, that they all need to come together and work together, because religion is missing integrity, right? Science is missing the true thing that makes, you know, everything tick, that it makes everything work, which is God and consciousness. So all of these things that when you actually put them in the context of one another, find that one force that unifies and connects them all together, which is consciousness, you actually find out that there's no conflict between them. It all makes sense because science is the discovery of consciousness, religion is the adoption of consciousness, and spirituality is the expression of it. So they're all in perfect alignment with each other. So there's no difference.
Okay.
But also part of our mission too, we have, like I said, many different facets of it. one of the things is to produce highly nutritious and bioavailable foods.
Wow.
Right? Without the use of toxic chemicals. We want to produce new materials to advance our technologies, to improve solar panels, computing, those types of things. We've actually found that when this blessing is applied to non-living materials, we actually have materials that behave and function differently, right? That is considered a scientific impossibility, things that change at the atomic and structural level that science cannot do, right? We're doing things that exceed scientific expectations and standards.
Have you done anything in this area yet, or
we have done this? Yes.
Can you share an example?
So in non-living materials, so we have over 4,000 experiments in material science, right? With non-living materials, metals, ceramics, polymers, and chemicals. And we've seen changes down to the atomic level. Basically, we're able to change the structure of the atom. We're able to make it bigger. We're able to make it smaller. We're able to increase the distance between atoms and decrease the distance between atoms, increase the energy within atoms and between atoms.
Without any chemical experiments, you're able to do this.
Right, without altering it or applying any other type of energy or material or substance, nothing whatsoever, simply the material and a blessing.
My God, this
and
is
using control
unbelievable.
samples as well. Have you heard of the term physical constants? The physical constant is like, at what temperature does water boil? You can't change the temperature because it's inherent that water will always, when you apply heat energy, it will always boil at this temperature. That is inherent to the atomic and crystallite structure of water, that it will boil at a specific temperature and it'll freeze at a specific temperature.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have things like boiling points, freezing points, firing points, melting points, right? There are all these different types of physical constants that do not change ever unless you apply some kind of external energy.
Exactly.
Right? Some kind of, alteration in the material itself. Right? You add some other material substance to it. But in and of itself, that material doesn't change. By applying the blessing, we're able to change the character and behavior of the material.
In the same environment.
Within the same environment. So what we're essentially doing is we're creating new materials that don't exist on this planet.
My God, this is really hard to believe.
Yes.
But I think once we talk more about it, I'll understand what you're exactly saying.
Another thing is obviously to help improve, human health and well-being, right? That's a big part of what we're doing too, is to help people live better quality, healthier lives. Something that science is struggling to be able to accomplish to this very day. And as well as that, we want to, basically awaken other people. We want to create more people, help people to attain that state of enlightenment, to help awaken the world, as many people as we can. That's another facet of our mission. And then another one is to develop a preventative model of healthcare. So right now, we only have a breakdown model. There's a problem, we have solutions, or we have ways to manage the problem, but we don't have things that can optimize your potential.
Yes.
We don't have things that can give you a new level of well-being beyond what your specific destiny or parameters exist right now. If this is good quality life for you, we're able to make your life go from here to there.
Yes.
We're able to enhance your quality of life beyond what your best quality of life is right now.
Our default definition has changed.
Right.
We are considering all this as default, whereas it can be much better than this.
Your baseline goes from 0 to 100, right? Something like that. Like what happened with me, right? This was me at the best, and this was me after the blessing. So literally preventative maintenance model or even optimization. Humans are one of those rare entities on this planet where it's like the sky is the limit for transformation, right? We've seen that when we're able to, develop ourselves and evolve to the point of enlightenment, right? And from there, they say the journey just begins, right? Enlightenment doesn't end, it keeps going. The people who have stayed with us, who have been receiving blessings from us, I'll give you an example. They've been with us since 2011, 29, 10, and 11, right? They've stayed with us since then, because their evolution continues to grow and evolve. So they continue and they stay with us to this very day. This is more than life for them. This gives them life.
Anything that a person can desire or wish for can be achieved with this.
I will say that as long as it's reasonable.
Who's giving a definition or who's putting a limit to this?
God, I would say. If your intention for this energy is to, evolve and become this person that hurts other people, right? Right. That does, things that damage other people or damages yourself, right? Things like that, then maybe those wishes will not be fulfilled.
Because the intentions are not pure.
The intentions are not pure. Maybe there's something else that would make you happier. Maybe there's something else that will fulfill you. We like I said, we confuse desire with happiness. There are a lot of things that we desire that we want to happen, but God knows what will make you happy. So what I can guarantee that when this energy is in your life, when these blessings are working for you, they're working to organize and evolve your being in ways that make your life better, that make you happier, that give you well-being, that give all of those things to you that improve every aspect and area of your life. There's no limit on what it can do in regards to that. Now, what we understand to be, our desire versus what will actually make us happy, we might be a little confused in that. And so, some people be like, I got the blessing and, I didn't get this person as my soulmate. And I guess because there's somebody better out there, you have to just wait a year till you evolve enough for that person to come into your life. And then that person will come and you'll be happier than with this person who will make you miserable.
So even if things done with good intention may or may not come true, if this is not good for you, can we say
good
that?
intention does not mean it's going to yield the best outcome.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
like a cobra, a snake biting you with good intention. If the cobra thinks it's going to help you by biting you and all it does is inject poison and it leads to your death, how is that a good outcome? Good intention, right? A lot of people think that as long as the intention is good, then everything's fine. And that's absolutely not true.
Does that not mean that whatever is meant to happen will happen?
I like to tell people that there are different levels of destiny that we can all live with. And that's what I meant by different levels of baseline that you can live within. Whatever will happen, but within these given parameters of your life. If this is your destiny, then maybe the best outcome of this destiny will happen for you. But if you evolve your destiny, you have outcomes from this level, better outcomes. There are better things that happen for you in your life.
What's the extent at which we can control this? If I, get the divine blessings, or if I transform myself, or if I go to that higher level of consciousness, how much of it I can control? How do I know that?
Well, I don't feel like you can control any of it. I feel like the best you can do is to be a better conductor for it. And the only way that you can be a good conductor is to be innocent and pure. Pure at heart. There's no way you can control what this energy will do. This is God. Nobody can control God. God is the one that gave you life. God knows your life. God knows what to do with your life. You can't control and persuade God how to make your life better, right? There's no way you can tell God, you have it wrong. I know what I need to make my life better. So purity and innocence is surrendering to God. It's understanding that God is the one that does everything. It's not us. That's where a lot of religion and spirituality have it confused, is we think that we're so busy with practices and rituals and these things that we're so focused on doing. We've lost touch with the fact that it's all about character. It's about consciousness that evolves us. It's consciousness that makes things happen. We are just expressions of consciousness. We think we can control consciousness through our thoughts, but it's consciousness that makes our thoughts what they are. It's like trying to push a 1,000,000-ton rock up a hill and you don't have that kind of power. It's like we're trying to use our thoughts to change something far more powerful than we are, and we're not capable of that. It's like this consciousness is something that's far more powerful than whatever our thoughts can do on their own. So the best that we can do is to be a better conductor for it, which is to maintain our innocence, purity, follow the divine principles and fundamentals, which is to live a life full of ethics and morality, to conduct ourselves appropriately, to have empathy, to have caringness, to have sacrifice, to want what's best for other people, to not live selfishly, right? Those kinds of things, the kinds of things that you would imagine would support life instead of taking life away. That's what gives life to things. That's what evolves. That's what makes growth happen.
There's a very famous quote by Mahatma Gandhi which says, be the change you want to see in the world.
It's a good quote.
Yeah. Okay, Dahryn, so we've been talking about consciousness a lot. What is consciousness, and why does humanity need it now more than ever?
Both religion and science touch upon this concept that consciousness is fundamental. So meaning it is The origin of our existence. It's the fundamental reality of everything.
Okay.
Meaning everything else is just an expression of consciousness. If you go into like all the religious textbooks, the origin of our religion, all of them really touch upon one thing, which is that the universe came out of nothing per se. That God created everything from nothing. God existed first, right? Because there's no creator to God, and then the universe came from God.
Yeah, but science has another concept.
Science has two concepts.
Yeah.
One of them has not been scientifically proven or validated. What our research has been able to do is validate that concept of science, which hopefully will make it more of a dominant scientific understanding instead of a theoretical one. Max Planck had the famous quote that consciousness is fundamental and matter is derivative of consciousness. So there are aspects of science that says consciousness comes before matter does. But they have not been able to scientifically prove it. But they have enough to consider it a theoretical possibility. They have not enough evidence to truly say that it's something real, that it should be a dominant, scientifically accepted phenomena that we all should, accept and embrace, within our culture and society. But we have a lot of people who talk about consciousness, right? Who theoretically discuss it. And Max Planck spent decades of his life trying to prove it without any success. And what we're doing is essentially proving that right, what religion and these scientific theories say are true, that consciousness is fundamental, that God did create the universe out of supposedly nothing through God's grace to experience God's glory on this planet. Grace and consciousness, I'm referring to the same thing. We're created from God's grace. We're created from consciousness. Consciousness is the foundation of everything we have. Everything is just an expression of consciousness in different forms. This table, this microphone, you and I sitting across from each other, we are all expressions of consciousness. And it's consciousness that dictates and programs our reality. It tells us what our destinies are. It tells what the destiny of an atom is. It programs an atom with its characters and behaviors. It's what makes an atom, form a water molecule versus, this table here. There is something that tells an atom what to do. There is something that tells our cells what to do. There's no mechanism that science has been able to discover that tells our cells what to do. All our cells start off the same when we're in the womb, when we're forming.
How can we say that this is not chemical reactions but consciousness?
All of our scientific research, 6,000 scientific experiments that we have conducted with over 670 peer-reviewed publications, all give evidence and credibility to this phenomena that consciousness is fundamental. And when you change things at the level of consciousness, you see changes that affect the character, the behavior, and the way all these other things basically are within the world. It changes the programming. It changes the destiny. It alters the fate and fortune. It makes everything different. It creates new materials, new species, things that only nature can do that science has not been able to do, consciousness can do. Like I said, creating those new materials by altering physical constants. Science has not been able to do that. Science has not been able to change the structure of the atom permanently. Science says it's impossible. We've also been able to make things form from nothing and make things disappear into nothingness. There's a scientific analysis called CHNSO analysis, which basically measures the chemical composition of an organic material. Right. And we've been able to, and all of them have, levels of C, H, and SO in different proportions. C is carbon, H is hydrogen, N is nitrogen, S is sulfur, O is oxygen. So all organic chemicals have, or all organic compounds have different combinations of these different properties, right? These different elements. And we've been able to make S disappear, sulfur, completely eradicate it. We make things appear and disappear. Things that nature says, that are only within the confines of nature's ability to do, that science and mankind cannot do, we've been able to do. We've been able to change physical constants. We've been able to change physics. Science says that there are certain physical laws that we can't change, that we can't alter. We've been able to change those physical laws. We've done things. We've changed DNA right? We think DNA, right? That is the origin of our beings. That is the basically the programming that science has identified as what makes up the composition of what we are. It determines your hair color, your eye color, your genetics, even your health and well-being. And we've seen things that when you change consciousness, we've seen DNA changes. DNA reflects the changes at the consciousness level. So that shows that consciousness comes before even DNA does.
You must have done a lot of scientific researches.
Yes.
That's why you are talking about it so confidently, and you have years of not just research, studies, and also results.
Right.
But for somebody like me, a science student, and for our viewers, it's a little difficult for us to still understand it,
Right.
to accept it, that, something can be just done unless we see it, or unless something happens right in front of us. It is difficult. And I believe even then we will say it's a magic trick or something like that.
Right.
So why do I believe this?
Well, the beauty of scientific research, it's objective. It doesn't work on belief. So whether someone believes it or not, it doesn't change the reality of something. If science tells you...
No, I'm not saying I don't want to believe in it.
I know.
I do want to. As much as I'm a science student,
Yes.
I'm also somebody who believes in God.
Yes.
I follow spirituality. I'm somebody who believes in both of these worlds.
Right.
But you're saying these are not two different worlds, but one.
Yes.
So that's why, for the sake of my audience, proving that it is all scientific, I want to know more about it. I'm just curious.
There's only so much you can do with personal belief. But when you address things with an objective reality, right, there's always the difference that we have to make, a choice we have to make in our lives between, reconciling personal belief with objective reality. That's the beauty of science. And that's why we rely on science.
Yes.
It's because science has done so much for us that a lot of people have actually left religion and spirituality because science has provided more for them than religion has. Right? You see, the younger generation are leaving religion and spirituality in droves. And that's simply because religion, spirituality, God will no longer become a dominant part of people's lives unless it can do more than what science can do for us. Or we unite the two of them, right? Until we're able to provide more for people through spirituality and religion than science can provide, where science has reached limitations and we're able to exceed those limitations.
Exactly. That is true.
So science has currently found itself incapable of treating some of the most basic things that we're suffering from today. It's huge crises that are so prevalent on pandemic level proportions. One of those being the mental health crisis. And that is where we thrive more than any other conventional alternative therapy out there.
Very true.
Is with mental health.
Yeah.
And the issue that comes with mental health is, like you said, how do we know this is chemical or molecular? Well, the whole foundation of science is that this is a molecular or chemical, or everything is a material composition. And if you can affect things at a chemical level, then you can change that person and make them better again. But science is still struggling to have influence and control over the mind and our emotions and our mental health. It's still not able to find a solution. Everything else is a temporary Band-Aid. You take a drug, but you have to keep taking the drug, right? Those types of things do not solve the crisis of mental health. And we see that even with the increasing amount of people that are in therapy, that are trying alternative and complementary therapies, right? All the other methodologies that are out there, we see that the stigma is decreasing, but the numbers of people who have mental health crises are increasing. So you think that talking about it more, going to therapy, trying all these different new spiritual modalities and new age, techniques and tricks that are out there would help reduce the numbers. But we're seeing that now more than ever, the numbers are increasing like wildfire, and it's out of control. Science can't address it because it doesn't understand what controls the mind. It still thinks it's a chemical process. So what I like to point out is that consciousness, when you understand consciousness is the thing that controls the mind, consciousness is what determines your state of mind.
How do we experience consciousness then? Can we see it, touch it, feel it, experience it?
No.
What's the way to reach that level of consciousness?
You can experience it in a way.
Yeah.
So there is no man-made technology, right? That can directly measure consciousness or its intensity or the amount of consciousness that is there. But what we do with our scientific protocols and experiments is we measure its effects. We measure the impact.
Okay.
So when you bless something and you raise the consciousness, it always shows an effect. Out of all of our 6,000 experiments, we have not have one failed experiment. And every single experiment has had unprecedented outcomes. That shows more than anything the credibility of our scientific research. And this research has been adopted. It's been indexed by the National Institutes of Health, Oxford, Cambridge, MIT, right? The US government. So there are a lot of, really highly credible universities and institutions that are, seeing the value of our research and indexing them and making them available to the world. And all of our research, we're transparent. They're all online so people can look and read through them all themselves. But when we get to how we can truly measure, there is a God-made machine, we can say, that can measure consciousness. And that is us, people. Right? We are the God-made machines that can measure the intensity and presence of consciousness. Our conscious experience is validation enough for its existence. But when we go into the intensity, what we see from lower levels of consciousness, we see that these people experience a lot of mental unrest. There's a lot of things like ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, consciousness in lower states, because consciousness, its function, its purpose, what it does is with greater intensity, it organizes and evolves that thing that it's basically, infused into, right? With this blessing, when we increase the intensity of consciousness there, right? More consciousness organizes and evolves that thing for higher functioning, for better outcome, for better productivity, right? Everything better comes out of it, you essentially say. It reaps all these benefits. And so when we see that with a human, right, this direct measure of consciousness in our lives is to see our state of mind, the number of thoughts. Have our thoughts calmed down? Is our mind more organized? How are our cognitive abilities? More clarity, more mental peace. We also see in lower levels of consciousness, there's more selfishness, there's more immorality, there's betrayal, there's a lot of people who hurt other people. There's a lot of bad characters that exist in lower states of consciousness, as well as just mental unrest and disorganization and chaos within the mind. A lot of thoughts running all the time. And when you go into higher levels of consciousness, when there's more consciousness, those thoughts slow down. The mind is more fine-tuned. It's more efficient. Everything is more organized. Everything is being able to integrate properly. And we see that this is reflected with greater states of peace, clarity, understanding. There's more compassion, right? You see good characteristics start to come out within that person. You see there's love and empathy, caring, sacrifice. Like I told you, those divine principles that we can all follow become pure and innocent again. So we are the greatest measuring tools of consciousness and its intensity. But there are a lot of problems with, measuring human outcome and the objectivity of science and differentiating psychology and placebo from real outcome. And so, that's why we have conducted experiments on more than just humans. We've extended it far beyond humans to things that don't have psychology, that don't have a placebo or a belief system, that don't practice a technique or a therapy or don't practice or follow any methodology. We see outcomes in bacteria. What God do they pray to, right? What belief system do they have, right? And then you have materials. It's like, what kind of psychology? What can you say to a material to make it believe it's going to boil at a higher temperature? There's nothing that can do that. And so we're showing, and with our clinical trials, we use psychological groups to rule out the possibility of psychological and placebo. We have control, placebo groups as well as the actual treated groups. So we can compare the treatment with real psychological impact and the difference between the two. A lot of these experiments that a lot of transformational leaders and spiritual leaders or people testing other types of modalities, they've limited clinical trials or these groups to very small numbers of people. They do not do the proper blinding protocols, or they do not use randomized control trials. They also, do them for short periods of time. And they also measure trivial parameters like blood pressure. And I like to joke that saying that you can associate good things with smoking and blood pressure if the study is short enough, right? Because you You deep breathe when you smoke, and so your blood pressure goes down. Initially, over long periods of time, you see that there's a negative correlation between the two. So you see how this can really, misconstrue the data when done incorrectly. So we're using the gold standard of clinical trials. We're using, RCTs, randomized clinical trials, several of which have been double-blinded as well to rule out even psychological bias from us and the investigators, right? And then this is remote. We're not even there. And on top of that, we're not just measuring psychological data. We're also doing something called the NIH Toolbox for Cognition and Motor Function. So this is the gold standard by the National Institutes of Health, developed within the United States. And basically, it's used to eradicate any subjective data. It's been used since I think it was 2012, right? And it's used by all clinical trials to determine whether a particular drug or therapy or technique actually has an adverse effect on cognition and motor function. Most of the time, it's actually a way to measure the toxicity of a drug. If the drug is too toxic, it negatively or adversely affects your cognition and motor function too much, then it'll be rejected from being put on the market. We are the first to show nearly 100% improvements, complete resolution in all psychological parameters, as well as nearly 100% improvements in cognition and motor function across all the tested parameters. So in cognition, we're doing like working memory, executive function, memory, language skills. In motor function, we're talking about endurance, dexterity, standing balance, locomotion, and grip strength. Right? So all of these things, when you take into the NIH Toolbox, they're randomized tests. And even the investigators, nobody knows what the next question will be, what the next assessment will be. It's all randomized. Everything changes. And the moment the answer is put in, it's locked and you can't change it. And it's stored in a server in the United States. So they don't even have access to the server that holds the data. So all of this is completely unheard of in the realm of clinical trials, especially with nearly 100% improvement. We found that all of their psychological data, right, they're suffering from huge problems like PTSD, mental restlessness, ADD, ADHD, severe anxiety and depression, sadness. They have relationship problems. We're also measuring things like menstrual wellness. We're measuring digestion. We're measuring, energy levels, right? Everything across all tested parameters and things that would be affected by, your state of mind. And we've seen resolution, complete resolution in all of them from every volunteer.
Is it just you and your husband, both of you do that, or is there a team also?
There are three people. So there's myself, my husband, and the, you could say, CEO of our organization, Alice Branton. So she's the third one that has been able to do it.
So only, it's just the three of you?
Currently, there's three. We intend for there to be more in the future, but right now there's three.
So every time that you practice it onto some people or a group of people, for example, this very study which you just mentioned,
right?
And it was done remotely. No matter who these people are, what are they suffering from, what their lifestyle is, what their actions are, what kind of medications they are taking, it just works.
We don't have them change anything. They don't change their medication. They continue whatever they're doing. They actually make commitments to not change anything, to not, mess with the data and change anything. And so everything is compared with their baseline as well to see where they were with all their current lifestyle, right? And then where they end up with only the blessings introduced.
Let's say if there are two people, one who's working on his or her lifestyle, modifying the actions, let's say eating right, taking medications on time, and doing everything what is required for him to be done in order to see a change. And then there's another guy who's doing nothing but just getting blessed, getting the blessings. What can we say about these two people? The one who's getting blessings and the other one who's taking the right actions. Who will see the results?
So I don't want to even say that, this works better than, following what the doctor says. I think it can work in addition to.
Okay.
And I feel like whatever you're seeing there, we can add more to it than whatever you can get just through conventional methods alone. I mean, in terms of data, what we have seen in our experiments is that we've been able to exceed conventional methods. right? So I can say that at the very least is that a lot of our results have exceeded the results of other experiments that are out there. We've done more than whatever is available out there in the world. We've been able to deliver more outcome and more benefits and more results than what other people have tried and failed to do, including conventional medicine and science. So I don't want to say that you shouldn't. I feel like that you should continue to follow your doctor's advice and the medical professionals and use this to support you on that journey. I'll give you an example. My personal assistant in America, before she met us, she suffered from a severe problem called Crohn's disease, right? It's a severe autoimmune problem within the gut, causes huge inflammation. So what happened is it was so severe for her that she ended up having her colon removed at the age of 19 to save her life.
Okay.
So she has no colon. And a colon, first of all, is an essential part of the human body. It's like, you're missing something very essential. It's the place that holds everything, right? So on top of that, she can't even, hold her bathroom, right? She needs to go to the bathroom like sometimes 20 to 30 times a day, right? She needs to always know where the closest bathroom is because, the moment she needs to go, she has like a minute to decide how to get there and that's it, right? Suffering from huge anxiety, misery, suicidal tendencies. She was suffering by all means in her life. It was not life anymore. In fact, she had even considered suicide multiple times. The irony is she didn't even believe in God before. And so after meeting us, it confirmed her belief in God. She finally started believing in God. She realized God's real. After the blessing, right? First of all, she's no longer on any kind of drugs. Without having a colon, she only uses the bathroom maybe 3 to 4 times a day now. Her health is like nothing it's ever been before. And doctors were not able to solve any of these problems. They weren't even able to help her by 10% because even the drugs weren't working.
How does the medical science explain this?
They have no explanation. They don't know. And because, consciousness is not a well-spread understanding that this is, a real scientific reality, it's hard for them to understand. But they do say that whenever they see these outcomes, and we've had many of our clients report this, they say that, their doctor just told them, I don't know what you're doing. And some of them say, I don't even want to know what you're doing. Just keep doing it. It's working for you. And so they keep doing it.
Mostly we call such things magical, something which can't be explained. I don't know about other places, but definitely in this country, every hospital has a small temple inside. In our country, science and religion have always coexisted. Right. Even in our movies, I don't know if you've watched any Bollywood movie or not, but we rely heavily on blessings and God, and we do believe in it totally. You said that, somebody with this consciousness or somebody who has this level of consciousness can experience all these things. How to kind of achieve this level? Is it a skill set or is it like an acquired knowledge? If somebody wants to feel or experience it, how can they do so?
The key to my transformation was having a conduit, was having somebody who was already established, right, in that state of enlightenment. Enlightenment is mandatory to be able to bless and heal and transform. When you get to enlightenment, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is consciousness, individual consciousness that has evolved to the point where it now has risen and is beyond the consciousness of nature. Because it's now entered into divine consciousness. It is something divine, the creator, the one who created nature.
Yeah.
Now, God created nature and nature's consciousness to keep everything, we can say, within its destined set of parameters. It has its own destiny, right? You can't move outside of the consciousness of nature. We're bound to it. So that's where the physical constants come from. That's why you have a set of, like a body temperature that if you go above or below that temperature, you can enter into a coma, become paralyzed, you die. So in order to have an effect on nature, you have to have enlightened consciousness, right? From that place, you could say, when an enlightened one prays to the divine, right, to bless, right, a person or an animal, a bacteria, plant, tree, non-living material, basically what that enlightened person is asking for, as long as the request is reasonable, God hears that prayer because that consciousness is within the realm of God, right, within the realm of the Creator. So God hears those prayers, and God always answers those prayers, so long as they're reasonable. And that's where you see these changes happen. So for, like a human or a microbe or anything, we're increasing the intensity of the consciousness within that. And as a result, that consciousness, it has an inherent intelligence. It starts to organize and evolve your being. It knows exactly what to do. It's that connecting piece between you and the divine. So your consciousness is actually what brings about that greater connection to God that allows you to harness more of the grace of God in your life and reap all the benefits from that. If you can somehow, right, evolve yourself through your own innocence and purity, which, sometimes it's a very slow process or very difficult for us to do. And if you're struggling to do that, to evolve your own consciousness, then the Enlightened are there to help. The Enlightened are there to facilitate, act as a conduit or like a jumper cable, and really speed up that process and help the world. That's what they're here for.
Right.
And we've proven it and made it a scientific reality that they can do this. It's real. And that further proves God is real.
If somebody wants to start their journey towards enlightenment, then what would be their first step?
Enlightenment is everybody's life purpose, right? Whether we accept it or know of it or not. It's ultimate freedom is what all of us are meant to do and meant to be, right? Because that's all that enlightenment is. It's freedom. Freedom from nature, freedom from the confines of our destiny, right? We are free beings. So that is all of our destinies. But along the path, right, what is, I'd say, imperative and essential is that we, make an assessment of our lives. We have to live in a way where we can sustain ourselves. We have to put our life in order, right? We have to make an assessment of our qualities, our strengths and weaknesses. We have to look at us practically. I say higher consciousness actually yields practical thinking. You're not living in fantasy or delusion anymore. So you take a look at your strengths and weaknesses, right? Your likings and dislikings. You follow a path in your life that fulfills you. Then you're following your destiny. And when you follow your destiny, you're supported by the divine. So on top of that, if you maintain the divine principles and fundamentals, you follow the ethics and morality ordained by God, not by man, right? And you follow in accordance with that, you can, become more innocent, more pure in your life, become a better conductor for this energy. And that will naturally, inherently evolve your consciousness. And if you have these divine blessings, I think that's the easiest and fastest way and the most supportive thing you can do to evolve your consciousness. That's the most effective thing and the only thing I know of that can really do it, aside from a lot of effort on our parts.
How is consciousness different from the grace of God?
It is the grace of God. I like to use that interchangeably. Spirit, soul, consciousness, the grace of God, all of those things I use interchangeably. So the composition, right, our essence is our spirit, our soul, or consciousness. It is that essence of ourselves. That's why I say more consciousness, it's more grace in our lives. More grace allows for more possibility, greater destiny, greater potential, greater well-being. More grace, more consciousness.
Just out of curiosity, I would like to ask this. Has anyone ever challenged you for something? This is not grace, this is not consciousness, this is not spirituality, this is clearly science.
Usually the response we get is not, this is something that science does. It's usually that's not possible. We've had scientists that hesitate to even publish this research because they're afraid they'll be blacklisted by other scientists because the results are so significant that they're like, we don't believe that's possible. Disregarding what the data says, they're like, simply, we don't believe that you can do this way, that this is possible.
Why is there always a conflict between science, spirituality, and religion?
There was a distinct point in history where science and religion separated from each other because they weren't always separate. And that was around the time of Galileo was the most significant separation. And what ended up happening is, right, when we go into religion and spirituality and its history, right, religion and spirituality has never been able to properly take whatever it claims to be, like the tricks, the dogma, the practices, whatever that religion says can change your destiny, that can make God, have mercy on you and through the grace of God, will transform your life if you pray in this way or if you conduct this or do this specifically. Religion has never properly taken that, put it into a scientific setting and validated it, nor has it even tried to do it on non-living materials or other living organisms aside from humans.
So it has always been abstract.
Right. It's always been limited to testimonial, to faith-based. So because of its inability to do that, either it's tried and failed or it just avoids doing it altogether.
Nobody basically maybe tried giving it a scientific backing or a logical backing.
Now, there have been some people who have tried but not have delivered the kind of outcomes that science needs to truly validate that kind of reality. So the outcome either isn't there from those particular tested, rituals and dogmas, or, maybe they're afraid to try them because they're not sure. And so they've limited them, or they think there are too many variabilities in the human experience. So they're not sure, they can't make a promise and truly fulfill the promise or commit to it. So we can't say why religion has done it. We just know that it hasn't. It hasn't properly validated, right, what it says to be true. And so as a result, it's shamelessly, unfortunately to say, limited itself to a faith-based institution. And because it's limited itself to a faith-based institution, science can't do anything about it. Science needs viscosity. Science needs weight. Science needs, tangible things that it can grip, that it can weigh, that it can measure, that it can see and feel. If there's something you can see but can't measure, even science, doesn't know what to do about that. And so science has disregarded any outcomes that come from spirituality and religion as simply, faith-based anecdotes of belief systems. But at the same time, it's science has found itself limited in a lot of its ability to, address our basic problems today. But the real thing that happened and why we've pulled away from religion is because science, like I said, has provided so much for us. It's given us so much. It's advanced our science, our technology, our medicine. It's given us, antibiotics, surgeries, things. It has far exceeded what a lot of people would say religion has done for them.
But there is one concept in which even science approves, that is the concept of energies, frequency.
Right.
Is it not the same thing? Belief, blessings, all these things, are these not our consciousness? Is it not an energy?
You could say it's the fundamental energy of existence. Yeah. Science believes in energy, but it has not, identified consciousness because it can't measure it, and it can't, measure its intensity, the levels of consciousness.
Quantum
it doesn't
physics
have a
is
way.
all about that. Quantum physics does,
but it's
exactly
not a predominant scientific belief, so there's not enough scientific evidence, and there's issues with quantum physics. There's lack of repeatability. There's lack of hardcore, mainstream scientific evidence. So you have double slit experiments and things like that, kind of vaguely, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's really cool. It suggests that when you observe something, it changes that reality. But you also see issues with repeatability, and hardcore mainstream science is like material science, right? Changing a material, right? Creating greater yield in agriculture, right? Creating, crops and increasing nutritional value. All these things science can easily measure and identify a cause and effect. But when it comes to quantum physics, there's a lot of problems. That's why it's still theoretical. Nobody has taken quantum physics and said, this is the new scientific understanding of our world. And we've proven, actually, our work supports the foundational research of quantum physics. It gives the evidence and credibility behind it because we've proven things like, the concept of quantum entanglement, which shows that at a distance, two things that are unassociated with each other, one can have an effect on the other thing, right? They're somehow entangled with each other.
That's where frequencies come into the picture.
We've demonstrated that with these divine blessings, with our clinical trials. And a lot of our experiments have been conducted remotely, not even in person, even, the agriculture experiments and even some material science. A lot of that is even remote too. And we've shown that, the blessing from one side of the world to the other side of the world, through the blessing, the intention of this person here, we're able to entangle and cause an effect over there on the other side of the world. Energy doesn't work like that. Science says energy moves and behaves in a very specific way, right? There's something called energy decay, where over time and space, energy decays. It gets weaker. If I'm transmitting an energy from the United States to India, eventually over time, that energy will decay and get weaker. And by the time it hits India, it'll have no effect, or it probably won't even hit India. And we've seen that the energy, this consciousness energy or grace of God, is more potent or equally potent, even remotely, as if you were receiving a blessing in person. So it's more than what science has claimed to be an energy phenomenon. This is something that I would say supersedes that or goes beyond that. Science might agree that consciousness is real, but the issue is what part in the system consciousness takes place, whether it comes before or after. Science strongly believes that consciousness is a byproduct of the brain still, because it considers everything a material reality. That's what happened with the division of religion and science is, science became materialistic and started ignoring the spiritual side of life, the things that we feel and experience, but can't really put into a scientific theory. And so it's limited everything to materialism. And because of this, and considering everything a material or chemical reality, we're not able to effectively address the most pressing problems we have today. And the pressing problems are our mental health crises. By affecting things at the level of consciousness, I've told you in our clinical trials, we've resolved 100% everybody's mental and emotional health crises. There is no treatment out there that's universally applicable to everybody that can resolve everybody's mental health crises. Just by applying consciousness, it doesn't matter who it is. It targets everyone uniquely and intelligently to address your mental health. And at the same time, when we apply it to agriculture, science is dependent upon toxic chemicals, right? Fungicide, weedicide, chemical fertilizers to produce, good quality crop production. And even then, it doesn't produce quality, just quantity. Without these toxic chemicals, it can't produce the number of crops it needs to feed the world and our nations. Right? It's struggling to do that. If our crops fail, we don't even have enough food on reserve to, feed all of humanity for more than maybe a week or so. So our world is so dependent upon toxic chemicals, and that affects our environment, our soil, our groundwater. It affects the air we breathe, everything. It reduces our quality of life. And science is dependent. It doesn't have another option. Now, if you look at this as something that consciousness can address, suddenly we have a solution. With our experiments with agriculture, we've blessed, seeds, we've blessed soil, fruits, nuts, trees, plants. We've seen changes in the bacterial composition of the soil. We've seen, improvements by several hundreds of percentages in the good beneficial bacteria in the soil and huge decreases in the negative, harmful bacteria in the soil. We've seen crop yield increase by as much as 600%. We've seen double shelf life in cashews. We've seen immunity increase. We've seen chlorophyll levels increase. We've seen, vitamin A, beta carotene, qualitative increases in agriculture that science is incapable of doing. Science has no answer. It has no ability to do this. And this is without the use of any toxic chemicals, not even organic ones. It's literally just the soil, the crop, right? This blessing, the sun, that's it.
Dahryn, when blessings can do so much, then why can't we bring it to use in cases of natural calamities or things like COVID or national wars? Why don't we bring the superpower into use during those times?
I do agree this is a consciousness-based issue, but at the same thing, there is a journey that life needs to go through and progress through, right? In order to learn what we need to learn, in order to even become, moral and good ethical people, sometimes people need to suffer, unfortunately. Sometimes people need to experience calamity. Sometimes these things need to happen. Now, yes, is this capable of fixing those things? I strongly believe it could be. But the thing is, you have to also deal with people that are ready for it, right? You don't just bless somebody who's undeserving, who doesn't want it, and who's ready to, use that blessing for the adverse. If you get a blessing and you grow as a result of it and you use it to harm other people, right? There's so many factors to consider and all of that. You can't just do one universal blessing and get rid of all the problems. Life doesn't work like that.
How do you decide whether this thing deserves a blessing or not, or whether this person deserves a blessing or not?
I would probably say that divine knows. The strongest indicator of your right receptivity to the blessing is your purity and innocence. If you're pure and innocent, if you're surrendered to the divine, all of that, you'll reap all the benefits.
Okay.
If you're full of ego and arrogance, you could probably get I haven't seen a case where people haven't had an impact. I've seen cases where people have had short-term benefits versus complete long-term permanent transformation. And the people who get short-term benefits, they just keep getting more blessings, right? Without changing their character, they get the mental peace and all of those things, but they don't transform, not permanently. And that's because they don't have that inherent purity at heart. They don't try and transform. And transformation is essential. It's mandatory for human life. That's our whole nature, is transformation. That's what consciousness does, is it transforms. So it definitely helps on our process of transformation and our progression, but it's between you and God. And I mean, it's not really up to me what that person will get from God. So I like to say all the blessings that we do is simply a prayer request to the divine, and the divine is the one that answers the prayer, right? The divine knows what to bring into your life. If the divine feels that, you might use this inappropriately in the wrong direction, maybe divine won't support you in that direction, but the divine will support you in all the other directions that will be for your greatest good and happiness.
Since you're a believer of God, I would like to ask you this. You said that if somebody is not pure enough from their heart, that person will not get the blessings as much as other people can get. Now, the purity of someone, what kind of intentions they carry, is it not defined, or is it not destined already? How can we say that their actions or their intentions are in their control?
Purity doesn't mean you will get a blessing or you won't, right? You'll still get the blessing. Purity can make you a better conductor. It can give you more of an outcome. Yes, that's true. But also what the blessing can do is it can help make you pure.
Okay.
It can, if you're sincere, if you're actually seeking growth, you could be full of bad characters and come to us. It's like all the people that have come to Enlightened Masters, they're full of people who have, supposed sinners and people who have, led horrible lives. And they've been the ones that have transformed the most sometimes.
In fact, there are so many studies which are done on the prisoners in jail. And whenever there is an educational program given to them, there's a huge improvement in their behavior and they're less likely to return back to crime.
Right. So, there's a certain level of sincerity that is involved, but I strongly believe this energy of consciousness, right? It facilitates that change from, something not so pure into something pure. But ultimately, God is the one that transforms our characters. It's not something that we can do through any behavior on our part. Like I said, consciousness is what determines our state of mind, not the other way around. So if you beseech God and you're sincere, God can make you pure. God can do anything. God has no limitations as to what God can do. So who knows what the results could be for anyone. But I will say that I have not seen a single case where nobody has had any kind of significant results. Everybody, no matter their level of consciousness or level of transformation, has received something absolutely unprecedented or significant or miraculous from these blessings. And so, I don't feel like it's limited to only the pure, but definitely the pure can harness and receive a lot more from it.
Yeah. But at the same time, you said that even consciousness can impact basic things like the quality of your sleep or cognitive power or your motor skills.
Yes.
So how can consciousness help in enhancing all these things? Basically enhancing the quality of life in general.
Like I told you, it has this inherent intelligence that knows what to do for everything, right? That's why we've been able to apply the same blessing to everything. And it has unique outcomes for that recipient, whatever it be. It knows what to do. Well, what does that mean? Let's look at that in terms of sleep. When we're dealing with good quality sleep, what prevents us from sleeping well?
Stress, tension, overthinking.
Right. Usually our state of mind, it's constant mental restlessness. Everybody has unique problems and unique people around them, right? And so there's this constant mental activity and mental communication going on. There's always something that the mind is processing. And we like to think that the mind stops working when we go to sleep. No, it continues to work. Right. The mind never shuts off. And scientists have proven this, right? That's why sometimes you go to sleep, trying to think of a math problem, the answer to it, and you're too tired. You can't think of it. You take a nap, you wake up and suddenly the answer just comes to you because your brain was working on the solution while you were unconscious in sleep, right? So the mind, until things are resolved, right, or in a state of complete chaos, right, the mind doesn't know what to do with all this information, with all these thoughts. It doesn't know how to calm things down, how to integrate or organize everything from lower states of consciousness. The mind is chaotic. It's disheveled. It doesn't know what to do. So in the same way, like if your mind is organized, if your mind is in a calm state, it's not disheveled, everything's integrating properly, that's the effect, the expression of higher consciousness, which means our ability to handle stress, our ability to manage stress is heightened. It doesn't affect us negatively anymore. And in fact, right, there's a difference between good stress and bad stress. Well, in reality, it's not really good stress and bad stress. It's how our mind operates with stress. Right. So in a state of dishevel, our mind takes on stress as a negative part, which leads to poor sleep, mental restlessness, right? The mind can never truly enter into a state of calmness. Calmness is essential for good quality sleep. Good quality sleep leads to the body operating properly, right? The good quality sleep leads to housekeeping in the brain. It clears away, organizes our minds, clears away old memories, right? It helps reduce our inflammation. It helps integrate the mind-body connection. It reduces, all these problems. It helps maintain our cognitive abilities. When you have huge stress, you have higher inflammation, chronic inflammation, right? Yeah. Stress is the killer of life quality. It destroys quality of life. And it's probably the root cause of all the mental disorders that we see today, mental health problems. And so when you have higher consciousness, you're able to enter into that state of calmness because, like I said, consciousness creates your state of mind. It is the expression of your state of mind. So your natural state in higher consciousness is calmness. You don't have to maintain it or create calmness. Calmness is natural to you in higher states of consciousness. Consciousness is the thing that links God with matter. Religion believes God is real, but doesn't know how God interacts with the world, how God created the world just through God's grace. But how did this come to be? How is all of this working? So when you put it all together, and that's exactly what we've done with all of our scientific research, is we've established that missing link between God, consciousness, and matter. We've established that missing link. We've made this comprehensive understanding of existence, which is capable of answering all these problems, this full spectrum of human experience that we're struggling to address and face now, has one solution. Our research, it's conducted with third-party institutions all over the world. It's not like us doing it in our backyard. We're using the most sophisticated technologies available, the ones that even NASA uses. We're using all the standard protocol and measures that science uses today to conduct all of their experiments.
Amazing.
Using the same protocols, the same techniques, the same materials and methods, and we're doing everything the correct way. And so over time, there's only one thing that science can do eventually, and that is to accept this consciousness as the fundamental reality.
At least I have never heard of this before. I mean, clinical trials done on consciousness or spiritual beliefs and actions. So this is absolutely new.
From my knowledge of all the experiments and research that's out there, nobody has done this. Most scientists will have 10 publications in their lifetime. We have over 670 on our science experiments, as well as 6,000 science experiments, right? This is available in over 3,000 universities in over 100 countries. One clinical trial that we've done, right? We've tested the psychological assessments. We've done the NIH toolbox. Well, we've also done even blood assessments. We've taken samples in blood. We've measured neurotransmitters, hormones, vitamin and nutrient absorption, insulin resistance, right? We've measured things that even psychology has no proven effect over across all the data that we've conducted research on, all science data has shown that these things are even notoriously hard to have influence over by even the most, accepted and capable methods and treatments out there. That we're not able to have influence over some of these parameters. We're seeing inflammation go down, which the closest we've come to that is by severe biologic therapies, right, which are very aggressive in nature and have a huge amount of risks and side effects. And it's usually for people with huge immune problems, severe cancer, like really severe health problems. That's only when we resort to those types of therapies to try and reduce that kind of inflammation and create those kinds of, immune pathways within the body, because it comes with a huge host of side effects, right? We've seen similar and even more anti-inflammatory outcomes from the blessing than from those treatments without the side effects.
In a nutshell, how would you define a blessing? Is it psychological? Is it spiritual?
It's a prayer to the divine from enlightened states of consciousness.
Do you mean energy?
Basically, it's the intention. You can enter into complete silence of the mind, mental stillness. In this state, this is enlightenment. When you have that ability to do that, when you can command and control your thoughts instead of them controlling you, that is the true indicator of enlightenment. When you can suspend thought entirely. And so from that place, right, you enter into a new state of consciousness, which is a divine. And from that place, your intention, right, for the recipient, right, to be blessed, for the grace of God, for more consciousness to be here. And then whatever happens, the outcome is between you and God and the evolution of consciousness within you.
When you're asked to, or when you wish to bless somebody or give your blessings to somebody, what exactly do you do?
So we call that a trance-like state, but other terms is like maybe samadhi, if you want to call it that. But I like to just say you enter into that thoughtlessness, you connect with the divine, and then you just pray. You pray to the divine for the best outcome for that thing. You say, God, raise the consciousness of this material, or God, raise the consciousness of this crop. I always say, God, you know what to do. I don't know what to do here. You know what to do. You deliver the outcome. God always delivers.
And you can literally address thousands of individuals remotely.
Yes. We've done it over the phone. We've done it, over Zoom calls. We've done it with our clinical trials. We've done it with materials and other experiments. We're able to do anything remotely or in person. There's no limit on how many that can be blessed or the distance required or any of those things.
Tell me something, Dahryn. In my experience or in my knowledge, we have always heard of or thought of or seen or listened about, read about people who have this divine power of giving blessings to be saints, to be either, monk-like or somebody who's, sitting in the Himalayas in a specific attire, very, very away from this world, this practical world and this materialistic world. But you are none of them.
You can tell.
So, yeah, exactly.
Face full of makeup, hair done, wearing a suit, sitting across from you on a podcast recorded through technology. I'm not an aesthetic by any means.
Yes, all of that.
I'm married.
Married, yes. So how do you balance these two sides of yours? One is the practical, social, material life, and then the spiritual, somebody who has a direct connection with God, as I would like to call it. Don't you ever feel drawn towards one, especially materialistic things like money or ego or comparisons?
I honestly don't see that there's any difference. I feel like everything is spiritual. I feel like everything has God in it. I don't feel like there's anything that doesn't. Like, come to the core of what consciousness is fundamental reality. God is everywhere. God is in all things. How is wearing a robe and not, being an aesthetic any different from, wearing a suit and being married? It's like God exists in both.
I totally agree to what you're saying.
Yes.
You can still be connected to God no matter what you're doing. You don't have to be a saint and go to Himalayas to practice that. I totally agree with that. But I'm trying to ask, don't you face or feel any distractions? Don't you think that being a part of this social, practical, competitive world distracts you from your purpose or maybe affects your energy?
No effect. It's like saying coloring your hair can create a change at the level of your DNA and permanently alter how the hair comes out from your head, right? It's like we're assuming that these things have an effect on consciousness, right? That's kind of where that true origin of the reason why I'm saying has no effect comes from. Because if consciousness is really what brings peace, what brings that stillness, and what brings that connection to divine in everything you do, what brings that confidence without comparison, what brings that vitality in your life, what brings that just connection to God really in everything you do, right? It's like there's no concern about those things because you're already at that peak. You're already at that place. And so none of these things can have an effect on that, can take away from that. None of these things can bring that away.
Yeah.
It's like I had a really funny experience when I first married Guruji, my husband. He was with a bunch of people and some of them are meeting him for the first time. And he was, because there's sometimes a little bit of nurturing you have to do because there's a lot of, stigma and a lot of superstition and a lot of, belief and repeated misinformation about what God is and, what it means to be spiritual and all those things. And so during one of those meetings, right, he opened a can of Coke and started drinking out of it. And one person had a horrible reaction because they're like, aren't you worried about how that'll affect your consciousness? The other person was like, I don't believe an enlightened being can be drinking Coke or they would even want to. And he was like, well, if you're worried about this can of Coke, if you think that has the ability to change my consciousness or affect my enlightenment, then maybe you should be praying to this can of Coke and not to God.
So does that mean the level of your consciousness cannot be affected by what you eat, what you wear, and even what you think?
No, you cannot alter consciousness by anything.
Can a bad person have high level of consciousness?
I think that's contradictory. I don't think a bad person has high consciousness. So that's an emanation and expression of lower consciousness is being a bad person.
And does anyone have to be religious or spiritual in order to follow this?
No.
It doesn't matter.
Like I told you, my personal assistant, right? She, didn't believe in God before, right? Still had incredible outcomes that are permanent to this day, right? She hasn't gone back or regressed. We have people from all different kinds of religions, from all different belief systems. In fact, we've actually seen what this energy, this blessing can do is it can help strengthen your faith. It helps people with their religion or their spiritual path. It makes people either believe in God when they didn't, like my assistant. It makes people, have stronger. We've had people, like from Christianity who stopped going to church and, were still believed in God and all of that, but they weren't as, devout anymore, who after getting the blessing and getting these huge benefits, they started going to church again. They started, following that path. And so that's okay. Everybody can conduct their lives however they choose. It strengthens your connection to God, not pushes you away.
Any practical steps to increase the consciousness? Any 1, 2, 3 steps that you can tell? So you said purity and all these things, but exactly how? What would be the first step? Can you define it in words?
It's just a state of ultimate receptivity. It's a state of gratitude and love for God. It's a state of trust, right? That kind of purity and innocence. Some people, it comes more natural to others. But ultimately, if people are struggling to reach that, right, that is the best receiver for this energy. But like I said, not the only requirement. Because what this energy, these blessings can do is they can make you more pure. They can transform you. They can make you innocent. So if the intention and the good intentions, that's when good intentions might matter, right?
Yeah.
So if the good intentions and the sincerity is there, as well as the discipline to become that.
Okay, so there is no reverse plan to enlightenment.
There's no reverse plan to enlightenment.
Okay. How's somebody who is enlightened different than a life coach or a spiritual leader per se?
I would say it's a difference between theoretical and outcome.
Okay.
So a lot of life coaches, transformational leaders, right? They have a lot of good ideas.
Yeah.
And I believe a lot of them have good intentions. But unfortunately, a lot of what they have as outcome is and this happens with a lot of them, is they'll take a few success stories or a few success cases and use that as an example for their teachings instead of the actual validation and outcome of science. And so I truly believe that in order to prevent scam artists and people who don't have good intentions, to prevent the amount of pseudoscience that's so prevalent in the wellness industry and personal development industries, right? To prevent harmful practices, because a lot of practices, they might just waste your time and money, but there are also ones that damage you. And so because science, a lot of this is limited to faith and belief, and science can't touch it, right? Science is void from being able to have an effect on it. Science tries to get involved, but can't measure the things that we want to emulate or create through the wellness industry, right? So science is kind of limited to what it can do there.
Yeah.
So it's like the Wild West. A lot of things run rampant. A lot of misinformation is out there. A lot of people think practices do things that don't do anything or in fact are harmful. So I really feel like the integrity of science is essential. It's mandatory if we want to truly allow real transformation and to help people in their lives. And so the real difference is the data. That's what differentiates us.
Dahryn, what do you think about destiny? Do you think that practicing consciousness or developing that level of consciousness is like altering your destiny?
Yes. I believe that evolving your consciousness transforms your destiny. A destiny of an atom, for example, in a given material, right, are its boiling points, its physical constants, right? It can't do anything beyond that. It's limited to that path.
Yeah.
Right. It's stuck on a specific trajectory and it can't do anything different from that. In the same way, it's like our level of consciousness governs our thoughts, our abilities, our ability to think clearly, to see choices and possibilities. It affects our mind-body communication, affects our physical well-being. It gives us clarity when we have higher levels of consciousness. It gives us vision of the future. It gives us greater integration power, right? Like in the clinical trials, we saw it improved people's cognition by nearly 100% in every parameter. That is a change in destiny. They're now living a different path in life than they would at their baseline. That is a new path. That is a new destiny.
So what do you think is the ultimate purpose of humans? What are we trying to achieve?
The ultimate goal is enlightenment. It's ultimate freedom
for everyone.
That's everybody's ultimate goal. Along that path, we have to find a way to sustain and live and follow our destiny, right? When we follow our destiny, like I said before, we're supported by the divine, right? Because the divine gave us that destiny and we transform, but we make an assessment of our lives. We find our likings, our dislikings, our strengths, our weaknesses. We find a path in life that utilizes all of that with complete honesty and humility as to who we are as people. We follow that. We find a life where we're not just struggling for survival, but we're able to sustain us, because when we're following our destiny, we're supported, right? So you're no longer struggling to survive. You're actually living, right? And then on top of that, right, enlightenment, there's nothing higher. There's nothing more than that. That's what all of us are here for. That's the nature of consciousness, is to evolve us until we reach that point, until consciousness becomes free.
What about those who carry emotional traumas for years and that is something which stops them from evolving? What is the solution?
So, right, emotional trauma stays with you till your death. Usually for most people, emotional trauma, and a lot of psychologists believe this, that emotional trauma never really goes away. They believe you find better ways to manage it. A lot of them truly doubt whether especially severe cases of emotional trauma can really be resolved effectively or completely, right? A lot of them truly believe you live with it for the rest of your lives. At least, traces of it, there's always going to be there.
In fact, science says that your emotional patterns are formed even before you're born, while you're still in your mother's womb. So how can they really get rid of these traumas or all these characteristics which they don't want to keep with themselves?
That's what we've seen in our clinical trials, right? With the assessment, because everybody who came to us had severe mental and emotional trauma, right? Severe mental and emotional health problems. And by the end of the clinical trial, all of them were completely resolved. Every single tested, emotional or mental health issue that they had at the time was completely eradicated.
Amazing.
higher consciousness does. It literally dissolves trauma. It completely, it's the only answer that can completely get rid of it entirely. And we have the science to back it up, that higher states of consciousness can actually resolve this trauma without you having to, go to therapy and do all these different things, because that's not what the volunteers of our clinical trial did. They just evolved their consciousness. And from that higher state of consciousness, from that organized, higher state of mind, right, the trauma doesn't exist there. So it just gets eradicated. It dissolves.
Those who are completely surrendered to God and they pray every day, they meditate to calm down their mind, their nervous system, their hormones, oxytocin. Even then, it's not a permanent solution.
Behavior-based, no, but that sounds like something different. So when you're talking about somebody who is in a state of that purity, right? They've surrendered to God, right? They're coming from a pure place, pure intention. Then those people would probably have a lot more outcome than somebody who's simply praying and doing pujas all the time and, just doing it because they that's what they're told that they have to do. Or somebody who's just practicing meditation, but not actually going into states of meditation, right? Things like that. There are a lot of behavior-based methods that people get stuck on and they think that they're being spiritual when in reality, that's no different from anything else.
What is the meaning of true spirituality according to you?
True spirituality is the expression of consciousness. That's what true spirituality is. Like I broke down science and religion, and spirituality is the expression of consciousness. True expression of consciousness is devotion, that love and that purity, that innocence. Those are expressions of consciousness. Those characters are reflections of what happens at a change in consciousness. Whatever connection to God that you already have, then yes, God can easily bless you. God can be there for you. God can be there for anybody who's pure and innocent and ready to change and is completely surrendered and humbled at the feet of God. I believe that's possible for anybody. This energy, this blessing definitely, can make that happen a lot faster, boost especially those people as well, those people who are sincere and they're seeking true resolution from their trauma, right? These blessings are the most effective on those kind of people.
Is there anything that you personally follow on an everyday basis or regularly to strengthen or to keep this connection alive, this connection with God? Or is it's once established, it's always there?
Once enlightenment is there, it's always there. States of mind can change, but enlightenment stays. What I can say is, morality, ethics, right? The characters that you try and discipline and follow as the divine principles and fundamentals to help evolve and transform you, right? You discipline your life in accordance with those. Those help evolve your consciousness. Well, from an enlightened state, that's your natural state, right? You don't have to try to be those things or to do those things. An enlightened being, right, their state is calmness. Calmness is the natural state of enlightenment or peace and love and bliss and empathy and caring and sacrifice. Those are inherent to enlightenment. I feel like you don't need to practice or do anything to instill those characters when you are those characters.
Okay, I have one last question.
Sure.
Blessing or being someone who can bless others, I think it's a divine thing. I think first you need to be blessed yourself to be able to become someone who can bless others. So such pious, such pure and such a divine thing. Why is there a price tag to it? Why is there a price tag to blessing?
So there's a price tag for multiple reasons. And there are many cases when we don't charge for blessings, right? When we feel someone is in desperate need and we truly feel that it's something that they would hugely benefit from. But when we're talking about price tag, we're talking about that multifaceted mission that we have, right? Which is a huge global scale thing that we have to do that will benefit humanity greatly. So this is not a small thing, or I'm blessing you and I'm getting money and that's all that's happening here. This is a mission. And this is a nonprofit organization. So the price tag for the blessing goes to the nonprofit, right? That's ultimately where it goes. It goes to funding this mission. First of all, I think it's appropriate to invest in your growth, right? People are willing to pay so much more for a cell phone than for one of these blessings costs, right? And they don't feel that there's any issue with that. And I feel like there is a level of exchange that's required. I feel like for what the journey has created, what this person has gone through on their own path, their own struggle, what they've overcome and done as a sacrifice and for this path and service to others and to this planet, I feel like it's only energetically appropriate that somebody should do something in return as opposed to just getting something for free all the time.
Yeah.
Second of all, people have more value for it.
Yeah, right.
It's very fascinating. We actually started off without charging anything for blessings at all. And people actually, really took advantage of that system. And it really got out of control, and they didn't have the proper value for what they were getting. It was only when we had a price tag for it that people actually, because the moment you're investing something, you're determining the worth of it in your eyes automatically. So people put a value to it now, and then they start to really pay attention to the results they're getting. All the science that we've done has cost us probably tens of millions of dollars over the last few decades that we've conducted all of this research. That's not a small amount of money, right? So, and able to even pursue this scientific research, to create this database of science, to do all of what we're doing now, it's not possible without charging something.
Right.
And
True.
I want to be completely transparent. It's our intention in the future that the moment we develop blessed food products and a bunch of other things that are be available, products that even the masses who don't know the blessings there are not, right? Once we establish all other models where we can attract, other sources of income to be able to support our mission and what we do, we actually intend to turn this nonprofit blessing-based business into, completely free of charge for people. So that's our intention for the future. But right now, it's just simply not a viable path for us in order to sustain and maintain what we do. And I feel like people are contributing to something great when we do it. So I feel like it's a good thing for them to do.
In the end, I would just like to ask that if someone listening to this conversation today feel lost or disconnected, then what would be their first step or the step to which they can take today to begin their journey towards consciousness? If there is one thing which you would like to tell the audience.
So I would say, try a blessing. Really, just try it. See, at the very least, you can understand what's possible. It gives you that shift in your mind to truly see what's available and real in the world. If you even have a taste of it just one time, sometimes that one time is enough to bring about great changes and to completely alter the trajectory of your life, so you can see that life isn't about what it was before, that life is something different, that there are other things out there. Even if you don't want to continue with the blessings, that's fine. But you'll at least get a taste of what's real, of what's possible. So if there's anything that I want people to know at the very beginning of this journey, is to know that God does love you, God does care about you, and God truly does want what's best for your greatest growth and happiness. And so if you can at least connect to that idea and know that that's true, I think that is probably one of the greatest boons I can give you just on this podcast alone, is to let you know that God is in your support and God is here for you, and you're not alone, and you are so incredibly loved, more than you'll ever know.
Beautiful, beautiful. If there are any links to the trials or the studies that you have done, I would like to drop them in the description box below.
Of course.
For those who want to learn more about it, know more about it. And if people are interested in exploring what you have to offer, we'll also love to share your website links or how they can connect with you in the description. Is that okay?
Of course. And just verbally, for anybody who's maybe not able to read the description, it's just divineconnection.org. So that's our website that has everything there. Our science studies, our research. You can connect with us there, ask questions, right? We're able to answer all of your questions. You can just stay updated with everything when we come out with blessed food products, like whatever we're going to do in the future, just stay connected. read more about it. Everything, like I said, all of our publications and science experiments are all on our website, and they're all, Google Scholar, all these different places you can, look into us and see what we do and read the data and the results for yourself. Come to your own conclusions.
Perfect. So go explore the website for yourself and check it out. Well, thank you so much, Dahryn. It was amazing. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I am in a different zone right now. I don't know whether it's your effect or what, but I feel truly lucky to have this conversation with you. And
Thank you.
I don't know from where to begin. I'll go figure it out and see and walk towards my journey of enlightenment. But it was amazing. Thank you so much.
I had an absolute joy, absolute pleasure spending time here with you today, discussing everything with you. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you.